Part 22. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 211. Chapter 211 Tiger's Den and Wolf's Den. The people in the yard were stunned for a moment, and then responded happily, as if they had found the backbone, and hurriedly started to move. The Sugun family clapped their thighs happily. Just now, Dr. Lu said that the child could not be saved and had to be aborted. Now that it is fine, Madam will definitely be happy. Every word hit Lu Changping's face, and his face turned blue and purple. Chun Shen even rolled up his sleeves and said angrily, "It's not like you don't know how hard your wife fell. If she doesn't die on the spot, even if the ancestral graves are covered in smoke, you still want to save the child. It's simply, what an idiot." Qin Zian looked stern and turned to ask Su Gun's family, "What's going on? Why did your eldest grandma fall?" The Su Gun family was hesitant and did not dare to say anything. "Qiu Tong, tell me." Qin Zian knew that there must be something fishy here, and her face darkened. Qiu Tong bit her red lips, lowered her head, and whispered, "Now is not the time to talk. Our grandma is still waiting for the slave to serve, so the slave will go in first." Sister Kaiyutong, Lian Xian stepped forward, holding her hand and walking into the house. "I'm not afraid of you saying that I don't have the eyesight. Who can't see the filth in this matter today? You are the grandmothers. Even her closest people dare not seek justice for her, so who do you expect to help her?" Seeing Kaiyutong purse her lips and her face seemed to be relaxed, she continued, "Today, our young lady and your wife's sister came over. From the gate to the yard, 2 more people came to stop us and persuade us. Go back. If the young lady and the second madam hadn't been tough, a few people would have stopped us. We broke in today, but I don't know if we will be able to come in tomorrow. As the saying goes, once the village is over, the store is no longer there. If you think that if you survive today, you grandma will be able to live a good life, then think that I am talking too much." Entering the inner room, she smelled the smell of blood. Lian Xian trembled in her heart. She let go of Qiu Tong's hand and went to the bedside to see Qin Kaiang Shuang. Her face was pale and she had run out of oil. She was very worried and asked the Dr. Wang, "Miracle doctor, this lady may?" "It doesn't matter." Knowing what she was asking, Divine Dr. Wang said without raising his head, "It looks dangerous, but in fact there is still a glimmer of hope." Rong Wenpo came in and tried to persuade her, "This room is small. Madam will start to work later, and the servants who cut off the water will come and go. I'm afraid there will be chaos. You two should go out and wait." "No, I am our grandma's personal maid, I have to stay here." Kaiyutong's eyes were red, and her voice was crying. Rong Wenpo nodded, "Okay, just one thing. Your wife is in a critical situation, so don't mess up the situation first." Qiu Tong reluctantly nodded, gritted his teeth, pulled Lian Xian to the corner, and told what happened in a few words. She said with red eyes, "That one is also pregnant. I don't expect my wife and uncle to cure her crime. I only hope to scare her and stop her from causing trouble again." Lian Xian knew something in her heart and sighed in her heart, but she didn't show it on her face. She patted her hand to comfort her, "Don't worry, your grandma and the child in her belly are the most important right now. Don't think about the rest. Leave it to me, Mrs. Sun Er and Our Lady. If Miss Su can accomplish this and relieve our grandma's troubles, Qiu Tong will work as a cow and a horse, and I will repay her for her great kindness." Qiu Tong cried and wanted to kneel down, but was supported by Lian Xian. Lian Xian smiled and said, "It's not too late for you to kneel down after this matter is over. You go and serve your grandma first, and I'll go and talk to my young lady." "Hey," Kaiyutong wiped her tears hastily with her sleeves and walked to the bed. Lian Xian stared at her back for a while, then went out, walked to Suleun and Qin Zian, and told them exactly what happened. Qiu Tong said that early this morning, Mr. Wen's concubine came over and sent all the people serving him out. Not long after, he heard a call coming from the house. When he went in, he saw that the two grandmothers were there, lying on the ground holding my stomach and screaming in pain. The concubine is also pregnant, Sulayun asked with a frown. Lian Xian nodded, I was pregnant, but I didn't know it at the time. I only found out today after the bump and the doctor was invited to take a look. So this matter was suppressed by Mrs. Wen and Mr. Wen, and a death order was issued. No spreading of information to outsiders. Oh, for the sake of a concubine and the child in her belly, they actually ignored the face and dignity of the future mistress and direct lineage. This Wen family is really impressive, Qin Zian shouted angrily. Sulayun sneered, I don't know who the future mistress and direct lineage are. Without Aunt Qiangshuang and the child in her belly, isn't it the concubine who is most likely to rise to the top? Liangzin and Kuilai looked at each other in disbelief, both thinking of the filth in Suhao mansion. The rules in the noble house are very strict, and the connections are very wide. This is not the case, let alone these small and humble households. The members of Su Gun's family cautiously came forward to persuade, second Mrs. son, Miss Su, this woman's delivery will take several days. Why don't you go sit in the side hall? When there is good news, I will be the first to call pass. Sulayun glanced at Qin Zian, who shook his head and said, no, I'll wait here. If Qin Zian wants to stay, Sulayun will naturally not leave. What's more, this matter is more difficult than she thought, and she doesn't dare to take it lightly. You should really stay here when bad news comes from inside, don't take the opportunity to run away, Lu Changping sneered again and again. Qin Zian felt unhappy, and became even more angry after hearing this. As long as Dr. Lu doesn't rely on his status to be arrogant and refuse to listen to advice, Qiangshuang will be fine. Su Gun's family was not happy either. We still don't know what's going on inside. The imperial doctor kept saying he can't be saved and bad news. Isn't this a curse on their grandma? Qiangshuang, my son, why did you fall so accidentally? My poor golden grandson. Just as he said this, Qin Qiangshuang's mother-in-law, Mrs. Wen, came in crying. Wearing an indigo long coat with blessing patterns, underneath it is a vermilion horse face with a pattern of 100 children. The brand new marks on it are still there, which shows that this is the first time the newly made clothes are worn. The daughter-in-law was born prematurely and narrowly escaped death. She just didn't show up. When she did show up, she dressed up carefully. Now, the sad look with eyes closed and covering the heart, crying, seems to be very fake. The mournful voice made Sulayun and Qin Zian immediately turn cold. Don't be sad, mother, my sister-in-law has always been a lucky person, and this time she will definitely be able to bring good luck to people and heaven, and turn bad luck into good luck. The young woman supporting Mrs. Wen persuaded her softly, her eyes rolling around without falling a single tear, but her voice sounded a bit crying. Sulayun looked at it coldly, feeling that his eyes were open. This Wen family is like a den of tigers and wolves. They are all hypocritical beasts, and no one is sincere. I don't know how Qin Qiangshuang lived in this mansion. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, Past and Present. Chapter 212. Chapter 212, Old eyesight is dim. The grandma of your family is naturally blessed to be able to have my master see a doctor. It's just a pity that her luck is a little thin, and she was hit by some phoenixes flying on the branches. Chun Sheng saw Mrs. Wen coming, glanced at Sulayun, and said in a strange way. Mrs. Wen's crying stopped suddenly, and she was shocked when she saw that there was Lu Changping standing in the yard. Mr. Lu, why are you out there? My eldest daughter-in-law, but, isn't good. Wen whose eyes lit up. The died just in time, and her dowry was confiscated, just in time to pave the way for her husband-in-law to become an official. By then, she will be the official wife? Lu Changping snorted coldly, I am not lucky enough to treat your daughter-in-law. What are you talking about? Mrs. Wen broke out in a cold sweat. She could no longer pretend. She just remembered not to offend him. Our master has given you countless warnings not to neglect you. Who made you so angry? Are you angry? If you tell me, I will definitely kill her. Chun Sheng pinched his waist and looked at Suleun with gloating, I'm afraid my wife's status is not as valuable as that person's, so I can't deal with her. They asked people to throw away the medicine prescribed by my master, and also found a wild doctor from outside to treat my grandma. It means that our master is kind-hearted, and because of his friendship with the noble man, he was worried that something might happen, so he stayed and waited. If it had been me, I would have given up and left. Mrs. Wen stiffened, and then she figured out what was going on. She turned around, her eyes fell on Su Gunjia, and slapped her hard, useless thing. I leave the eldest grandma to your care. It's better for you not to listen to the imperial doctor's words, but to listen to a wild man. If it hits. Say, do you want to kill my golden grandson? Madam, please spare your life, I don't dare. Su Guan's wife fell to the ground hard, her face turned pale from the pain, she endured the pain and knelt down straight to explain, that's not a wild man, he's 100 Dr. Wang from the cottage and Rong Wenpo from Sifang Street, these two are well known among the people. They said that the young master could be saved, so I let them in. Mrs. Wen also knew that Lu Changping had said that the child in Qin Qiangshuang's belly could not be saved when he arrived, so she did not come over. Now that she heard that the child could be saved, her eyes immediately lit up. But when she thought that Lu Changping was still watching, she couldn't offend anyone, so she slapped Su Gunjia's face again, you've never seen anything in the world. What kind of folk miracle doctor? How can it be compared to giving is the imperial physician who treats the nobles in the palace highly skilled in medicine? I say one thing to you, and you have 10 words waiting here. How cool. Come here. Get her out of here, and don't let her step into the yard again. Quiliu caught Suleun's eye, took a step forward, and protected Su Gun's family behind her. Her face was as cold as a decisive Rakshasa. Mrs. Wen wanted to kill a chicken to scare the monkey, and she did it to show our young lady, but she made a mistake. Abacus. Although our Suhao mansion is not a wealthy family, the young ladies in our mansion are not allowed to be humiliated at will. Mrs. Wen's heart trembled, and then her teeth itched with hatred. This master and servant came into her house to show off and offended Dr. Lu. How could she explain this to the master? It's really harmful. See how she treats her. Mrs. Wen looked around and her eyes fell on Suleun. Then she walked around her and blessed the lotus beside her, Miss Su is here. I can't welcome you from far away. I hope you can forgive me. Ha ha ha, that's wrong, that's not Miss Su, that's Miss Su's maid. Chun Sheng laughed happily and pointed at Sulei, that's Miss Su. Ah, Mrs. Wen seemed to be frightened. She covered her mouth with a handkerchief and her eyes were frightened. Then she hurriedly saluted Suleun. For the sake of my innocence, please spare me this time. Chun Sheng put his hands on his hips and laughed, Mrs. Wen is really dim-sighted. Although the daughter-in-law of Suhao Mansion was brought back from the countryside and looks like a village girl, she still can't recognize her as a maid. What if she went back and cried? Cry, the future of your family is at an end. Mrs. Wen had never thought about this. It was related to the future of the men in the family. She was really scared, and her attitude became more sincere, Miss Su, I am old and my eyesight is dim. You must not take it to heart. Just, for the sake of Qiangshuang, please spare us. Is there anyone present who doesn't know Mrs. Wen's thoughts? Even though Miss Su was brought back from the countryside, no one could tell the difference between her and those noble ladies. She even had better etiquette and upbringing. What she did just now was just to embarrass others. Qin Zian sneered, it's true that he is too old and too dim to use a mallet as a golden stick. She really didn't expect that her sister Qian Shuang's husband's family was like this. If she had known about it earlier, she would never have let Qian Shuang marry into the Wen family. Mrs. Wen's face froze, and she responded with a smile. Su Changping's face turned purple. How could he not know that the stick in Qin Zian's mouth was referring to him? There was a tense situation outside, and the house was also extremely tense. Ah, my stomach hurts so much, my child. Madam, don't worry, the child is still there, please follow me and work hard. Rong Wenpo's voice came from inside. Wen Hu's expression changed. This Qin Qian Shuang and the in her belly are really destined to die. It's okay to fall like that. It's really abominable. If she gives birth to the child smoothly, where can our second wife get money to buy an official position? This must die. Her eyes rolled, thinking about it. She supported Mrs. Wen and said sadly, sister-in-law fell down, and I don't know what she is going to be like. Why don't we go in and take a look at her? Mrs. Wen was also thinking about the child in Qin Qian Shuang's belly, but she didn't want to see Sulayun, so she immediately responded and walked into the house. Having lived for 2 lifetimes, Sulayun couldn't figure out Wen Hu's plan, so he winked at Kualayu. The two of them were stopped, and their expressions were not very good. Mrs. Wen even asked angrily, what do you mean, Miss Su? Sulayun was minding his own business and sat on the armchair brought by his servants. He said with a cold face, since you know that the situation inside is dangerous and you have no medical skills, it will be troublesome to go in. If you really think about Aunt Qian Shuang, you should stay outside. Let's wait for the news. What you said is nice. The person lying inside is my eldest grandson. Mrs. Wen was so angry that she couldn't care about etiquette and dignity. She turned her face on the spot. You are such a good doctor, you kick someone out, but you let the wild doctor went to see a doctor. I think you don't want our Wen family to be well. End of this chapter. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 213. Chapter 213 Threat. How dare you? How dare you be unreasonable to my young lady? Kualayu glared, murderous intent suddenly appearing, making people's hearts skip a beat. Mrs. Wen shrank her neck in fright and did not dare to do it again. I was unhappy, so I deliberately started to make trouble. I immediately sat down on the ground, closed my eyes, patted my thighs, and cried, my poor Jin son. It's my useless grandma, I can't protect you. It's pity that I, the Wen family, have only a few heirs, and my wife's belly finally has trouble, and yet she suffers such a misfortune. How can I explain this to my ancestors? Qin Zian felt cold in her heart when she saw this. Suddenly, the back of her hand felt warm. It was Sulayun who held her slightly cold hand and said, don't worry, Aunt, nothing will happen to Aunt Qian Shuang. Lu Changping was watching the play on the sidelines, feeling happy and relaxed. He didn't want to receive this diagnosis from the beginning. How could a good person go to after giving birth, let alone someone who had already gone to hell? If the Wen family hadn't told him to treat him with peace of mind, no matter whether he died or lived to the best of his ability, he wouldn't have taken over and ruined his reputation in vain. Now he is happy to get away if he calls the second lady from Suhao Mansion's village girl into trouble. When the person is about to die, he will give 2 more needles on his own initiative and say that there is no way to save him, and the matter will be over, and his reputation will be saved. Mr. Wen Hu was even more happy. She had forgotten that the person who delivered that bitch's baby was found from outside. How could a no-nonsense person be called a miracle doctor? He is famous among the people, but it is because those mud-legged people have no knowledge and do not know the ability of imperial doctors. She doesn't need to do anything now. The two people inside can put that Qin Qiangshuang to death. Everyone will be happy then, and she will be able to do it calmly and cleanly. Tao Rui is a concubine. She used some means to get rid of the child in her belly, which was even easier. As long as she gets the dowry from that Qin Qiangshuang and buys an official for her husband, she will be an official's wife. Then she will give birth to the eldest grandson of the Wen family. Isn't she the one who has the final say in this huge mansion? After thinking about this, Mrs. Wen who was so happy that she almost laughed out loud. She quickly covered her eyes with her mother-in-law and cried loudly to cover up her schadenfreude. Green Willow and Lotus Heart frowned frequently. The situation in the house is still unknown. They are crying and fussing here, as if the people inside are dying, which is really inappropriate. Just as I was thinking about it, a series of exclamations came from the room, and then the door opened, and Qiu Tong came out, with a frightened face and a bad tone. What do you mean by making such a loud noise outside at this time? Our grandma is already in a dangerous situation. If you continue to make such a noise, I'm afraid you may kill her and the child in her belly. Okay, you little bitch. Now that someone is supporting you, you dare to look down on me. Upon hearing this, Mrs. Wen stopped howling, and immediately jumped up and pointed at her nose and scolded, "Don't even think about it. I wonder whose maid you are. My aunt is the one you can yell at." "That's right, the one inside is my sister-in-law. She narrowly escaped death inside. We, mother-in-law and daughter-in-law, feel sorry for her." "What's the matter with crying twice?" Mrs. Wen who also jumped up and agreed, "What you said is really heartbreaking." Qiu Tong was so angry at their words that she burst into tears. She didn't argue with them. She knelt down in front of Qin Zian and Suleun and said with tears, "Mr. Rongwen finally comforted our grandma and she was about to give birth smoothly, but the crying and howling just now frightened our grandma, and she almost lost all her efforts. Po Rongwen said that our grandma can't stand the torture anymore. If it happens again, she won't be able to recover." Mr. Wen who was very happy, it really took all the effort. She climbed up from the ground, pointed at the door and cursed, "Nonsense. Those two quack doctors inside can't save people, so they just want to find an excuse to pour this dirty water on the heads of our mother-in-law and daughter-in-law, then they will beat her. Wrong idea. Don't bully our small family just because they have the backing of noble people. The people inside are the future mistress and eldest son of our Wen family. If there is someone who has both good and bad qualities, it doesn't matter if she is Miss Home Mansion or a folk miracle doctor. They all know her. Go to the official." As soon as she heard that her eldest grandson was about to die, Mrs. Wen immediately rushed in, "Younger brother, follow me in and take a look." Seeing them rushing in with great momentum, Kuai was afraid that they would collide with Suleun, so she immediately protected her behind her. Suleun's temperament was condensed. He clenched his soft, boneless hands tightly and shouted in a cold voice, "Here comes someone. Stop him. Except for the maids delivering water and medicine, no one else can enter." Kuai stopped Mrs. Wen and Mrs. Wen who and said with a cold face, "You two ladies should go sit in the yard, lest the slaves be clumsy and bump into you too." "Bah! That's my daughter-in-law over there, and I'm not just some idle guy," Mrs. Wen spat, her eyes glaring eagerly as if she wanted to eat the green willow alive. She was just a wild girl brought back from the countryside. If it weren't for the fact that she was a direct descendant of the home mansion and was afraid of causing trouble if she wandered outside, it was still unknown whether he would be willing to bring her back. Fortunately, she actually used her identity to show off her power. So what if there is another Mrs. Sun? The Sun family has also been defeated. They really think they are nothing. Just now she didn't think about the pros and cons of this and wanted to give the home mansion some face to treat her politely, but she turned her nose up and acted more and more powerful. Come here, there are many people here. Please invite Miss Su and Mrs. Sun Er to sit in the flower hall. Mrs. Wen shouted loudly, then squinted her eyes at Suleun and said with a smile, Miss Su, the servants in our house are all clumsy and they are afraid of offending the young lady, so the young lady should leave alone. Lian Xian immediately turned cold and said, You are so brave, how dare you threaten our lady? It's just a kind reminder. Mrs. Wen smiled, her heart tightening with joy. Miss Su has already helped a lot, I don't need to worry about the rest. What if I have to bother? Suleun's watery eyes met Mrs. Wen's hazy eyes, murderous intent bursting out. Mrs. Wen's heart trembled and she hurriedly looked away. When I thought about it, I was actually restrained by a girl. Her face suddenly turned ugly, and she angrily scolded everyone, Why are you standing still? Why don't you ask Miss Su and Mrs. Sun Er to go out quickly? Wen Hu stood aside gloatingly, already thinking about how to spend Qin Qiangshuang's dowry. The servants looked at each other in disbelief, not daring to make any mistakes, so they stepped forward and said angrily to Suleun, Miss Su, please. Get wild. Quiliu curled her fingers to her lips and blew a whistle, and dozens of strong men in black attire landed in the yard. They all lifted up their robes and knelt down on one knee to salute Suleun, Miss. Looking at the murderous aura of these people and the tokens of the Sun family worn around their waists, who wouldn't know that they are the soldiers of General Sun's palace? End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 214. Chapter 214, Feet First. Qin Zian was stunned for a moment when she saw the government soldiers. She had previously wondered why Li Yun took them with him before going out, but now she saw that they had come in handy. Mrs. Wen immediately choked when her words reached her throat. She pulled Mrs. Wen who was also pale with fright, in front of her to block her. She was so resentful that she did not dare to look at Suleun. Where could she still have the arrogant aura just now? Suleun nodded and ordered, Get up and guard this door firmly. If someone breaks in, take it down. Her eyes swept across the faces of Mrs. Wen and Mrs. Wen Hu, and her voice was cold, Qiu Tong has already said that the situation inside is dangerous. If anyone dares to make noise and make trouble again, he will be treated as intentional homicide and escorted away. Dali Temple. Mrs. Wen, second Grandma Wen, please don't say that we won't give you Two-Face when the time comes. Mrs. Wen and Mrs. Wen Hu responded with their heads down and eyes drooping, not daring to speak anymore. If there are only Suleun and Mrs. Sun, Mrs. Wen still dares to shout that all the soldiers from General Sun's palace have come to serve as her bodyguards. Who dares to look down on her? This is an honor that even the eldest daughter in the Suhao mansion does not have. Seeing that the two people had calmed down, Qin Zian also softened her expression, turned to Qiu Tong and said, You go in first to help. If you need anything, just come out and pick it up. If you don't have it in the house, my Sun mansion will take care of it. Yes, Qiu Tong felt reassured, quickly wiped away her tears, bowed and went into the house. With the addition of these dozen or so soldiers, no one in the Wen family dared to act rashly. The courtyard suddenly became quiet, and the little maids who came and went to bring water also walked more lightly. Things went smoothly. Suleun remembered something. She looked at Mrs. Wen and asked, seemingly unintentionally, and Qiangshuang has such a big incident, why can't she see her husband? Su Guangjia's lips twitched and she didn't dare to speak. She only looked at Mrs. Wen secretly with her eyes. Others also avoided Suleun's gaze, fearing that she would ask questions about their heads. It's so hard to talk about, who can't see the strangeness in it? Qin Zian was furious and shouted angrily, Where is Qiangshuang's husband? Can't you tell me? Everyone was frightened and trembled. Mrs. Wen's face was extremely ugly. Even if Qin Zian is Qin Qiangshuang's sister, it's wrong to come to the Wen family and make a fuss, and now she has to question her son. I really don't know what etiquette is. He wanted to reply, but when he saw the dozen Xuanyi soldiers with swords on their waists, he suppressed the anger in his heart, turned his face away, and stopped looking at them. Mrs. Wang from before smiled and leaned forward to explain, our eldest son is about to enter the spring, and the masters in the academy say that his talent will definitely make him enter the top 3. This year, he has been going to Jade Tower to compete with his classmates every day. I'm afraid it's also there today. Mrs. Wen rolled her eyes and said angrily, it's not easy for us from a small family to get a foothold in Beijing. It's not as good as the Haoying family, which has a great reputation. Any dandy can get an official position and half a position, and still hire 2 people, someone who understands and appreciates the difficulties faced by families like ours. Which woman has not stepped into the gate of after giving birth? You can't call the man back from the outside just because of this. What's the future of such a man? Lian Xian is so thoughtful, how could she not tell that Mrs. Wen was talking about their young lady? She turned to look at Suleun and asked, does this mean we have to send someone to bring Mr. Wen back? Suleun didn't know why Qin Qiangshuang married Mr. Wen, but he also understood that no wife didn't want to see her husband at this time. What's more, Qin Qiangshuang's situation is in crisis now, but her husband is still living and drinking outside. Who wouldn't feel chilled knowing this? She gritted her teeth and said, Quiliu, take the soldiers from the general's mansion to the Feiqi Tower in person to ask Mr. Wen to come back. Yes, Quiliu responded immediately. Seeing that it was not good, Mrs. Wen immediately shouted angrily, how can this happen? A good man has his ambitions in all directions, how can he ruin his future because of such a trivial matter? Miss Su is making too much of a fuss. A little thing, Qin Zian almost laughed angrily at her, if we hadn't come here and poured down a bowl of hot medicine, white flags would have been hung on this house by now. Do you call this a small thing? Mrs. Wen pursed her lips and said reluctantly, isn't it okay now? After all, it's not her biological daughter who doesn't feel sorry for her. Could it be that Mrs. Wen just wanted to marry her again if she lost her daughter-in-law? Qin Zian stared at her with a pair of beautiful eyes and said in a cold tone, if Qiangshuang disappears today, in order not to affect Wende considering the young master's future, Mrs. Wen won't hang up white flags for Qiangshuang, right? Mrs. Wen felt so guilty that she did not dare to speak after being told something that was on her mind. The courtyard suddenly became quiet. Everyone felt Qin Zian's anger, and they didn't dare to breathe for fear of being burned. When it gets quiet outside, the sounds in the house become clearer. Qin Qiangshuang's screams kept coming from the house, hitting Qin Zian's heart one after another. Coupled with the constant flow of basins of blood coming out of the house, Qin Zian's heart became even heavier. Suleun patted Qin Zian's hand comfortingly, with a serious look on his face. Mrs. Wen lowered her head and didn't know what she was thinking, but Mrs. Wen whose face tightened, and the handkerchief in her hand was tightly tangled. She kept looking into the room. Who didn't know, but she thought she was worried about what was going on inside. People. Ah, why did this child's feet come out first? A panicked sound came from inside, and then there was the sound of a copper basin falling to the ground, and the room suddenly became chaotic. Qin Zian tightened her hands and stood up suddenly, staring nervously into the room. Lian Xian stepped forward to help her and whispered, "Second madam, don't worry, Rong Wenpo has been delivering babies her whole life. She has never seen any big storms or waves. Grandma Su will be safe and sound." Wen Hu's eyes lit up, he grinned, and then he covered his face with a handkerchief, for fear of being seen. Although she has never given birth, she has heard many strange things. If a child is born feet first, he will most likely die, not to mention the one who fell. Mrs. Wen slapped her thigh and did not dare to cry loudly. She opened her mouth wide and raised her eyes to the sky, looking extremely sad. Don't panic, Rong Wenpo's tone was calm, and there was no trace of panic in her voice. Everyone does what they are doing, I'm here. Lu Changping sneered, how ignorant and fearless. The child's feet came out first, and even if he was born successfully, he was suffocated to death. The top priority is to stop the loss in time and save the adult. My poor grandson. After hearing this, Mrs. Wen couldn't help but slap her thigh and howl. Glancing sideways at Suleun's impatient gaze, she flattened her mouth and covered her mouth, not daring to cry any more. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 215. Chapter 215 Born. Where are the ginseng slices? Put one under your wife's tongue and hold it in your mouth. Dr. Wang, please give the pregnant woman acupuncture to stop the bleeding and protect the heart. Rong Wenpo's voice was calm and solemn, giving people a sense of comfort for no reason. Ah, divine Dr. Wang, Wen who covered her mouth with her handkerchief and whispered, isn't that a man? My sister-in-law is giving birth. How can a man be involved in such a private matter? Meeting Qin Xian's gaze, Mr. Wen who was frightened and kept silent, and lowered his head with a guilty conscience. Suleun looked at Mrs. Wen who was gritting her teeth and sneered, life and death are at stake inside, but you are full of men stealing and women being prostitutes. Who did second Grandma Wen teach you? Wen who blushed when she was scolded, biting her red lips and almost cried. Seeing that Mrs. Wen was not convinced, Suleun continued, in this world, there are many men practicing medicine. If Mrs. Wen can't even tolerate this, why bother to invite Dr. Lu to come again? Could it be that after he saved people, you want to take this too? Are you trying to humiliate him? Lu Changping glared at Mrs. Wen with disgust, what an ignorant woman. Mrs. Wen's heart skipped a beat. Seeing Lu Changping's face, she immediately explained, of course not. Dr. Lu treats the nobles in the palace, so he must have a strong sense of balance in his heart. All doctors with medical ethics have a strong balance in their hearts, not just those from Taiyuan Hospital. Suleun's voice was louder, the medical skills and character of divine Dr. Wang are well known by everyone. Don't judge a gentleman with a villain's heart. Mrs. Wen's old face turned red with shame, and she glared hard at Mr. Wen who was looking for trouble. Wen who never thought that stealing the chicken would turn out to be a handful of rice, and she felt extremely regretful. She even held a grudge against Qin Qiangshuang. If it weren't for her, how could I be so embarrassed? Damn it! Wow wow wow! The baby's loud cries were deafening and startled everyone in the yard. Ah! My golden grandson, Mrs. Wen was immediately overjoyed and wanted to rush in. When she saw the palace soldiers standing in front of the door with a menacing look like a door god, she stopped in fear and looked at Suleun angrily. Give a baby, she's a daughter of gold. With a smile on her face, Rong Wenpo held the baby and came out to announce the good news. She saw Mrs. Wen standing at the bottom of the steps and congratulated her. Congratulations, madam, congratulations to madam. What kind of daughter? Mrs. Wen's face suddenly stretched, and she stared at Rong Wenpo fiercely. I asked the master to calculate it. Qiangshuang is pregnant with a baby. How did she become a little girl? Rong Wenpo's smile froze on her face. This child was not good either if she handed him to him or not. Mrs. Wen suddenly realized something and pointed at Rong Wenpo and said, the master said that this child can be delivered to full term. You must have brought this child out in advance, and then you lost my golden grandson. You pay me compensation. Those are the legitimate sons and grandsons of our Wen family. You bunch of quack doctors and stupid women who have killed 1,000 people. Mrs. Wen covered her face and looked up and cried loudly, as if she was dead. After hearing this, Rong Wenpo held the child in her arms and said coldly, I have never heard of such a truth. Let everyone judge who is stupid and who is stupid. Just judge. Mrs. Wen stamped her foot, turned to look at Lu Changping, and asked softly, Mrs. Su, of course there is no need to say much about your medical skills. Please tell me whether this child was killed by that person in the room. What can two quacks do? She was sure that Lu Changping would be on her side. After all, he had a bad attitude towards those two people, so he wanted to make it impossible for them to get off the stage. It would be best to ruin their reputations and send them to Dali Temple for questioning. By then, Suleun, who invited them here, will definitely not be able to escape the involvement. He will be punished as well, so that he can vent his anger. Idiot, Lu Changping shouted angrily, his face turned red and his eyes were red with anger. Mrs. Wen twisted her lips and looked at Po Rongwen proudly, did you hear that you are a fool? Although the words are a bit unpleasant, they are reasonable and you should listen to them. Rongwenpo rolled her eyes and did not answer. Lu Changping was furious and spittle flew everywhere, I'm talking about you. Huh, Mrs. Wen was stunned and couldn't come back to her senses for a while. Lu Changping looked at her and was furious. The child was born smoothly, and the mother and daughter were safe. This was already a slap in the face. He, a dignified imperial physician, was actually outclassed by two wild folk, and he wished he could find a crack in the ground to crawl in. It's a good thing for this idiot that he even had to be dragged out to confront others. She said such stupid things, and she still wanted to agree with her? Does he still want his reputation? The more he thought about it, the angrier he became. Lu Changping flicked his sleeves and said angrily, the month of the child is determined when he is 3 months old. I have never heard of a child having his gender changed just because he was born in the wrong month. Since Mrs. Wen believes what the fortune teller says, she shouldn't have called me here. Chun Sheng, take your things and let's go. Hey, Chun Sheng also felt guilty at this time. Seeing the master calling him, he quickly picked up the medicine box and left. Mrs. Wen was immediately dumbfounded. She didn't know which of her words had offended him, so she rushed to stop him. Mr. Lu, you can't leave, many things here depend on you. Chun Sheng pushed her away, put his hands on his hips and said angrily, since Mrs. Wen has already found a fortune teller, the eldest grandma and the little daughter will definitely be safe. My master still has many important things to do, and his time can't be wasted. No, if you need any help, Mrs. Wen should go find a fortune teller. After saying that, he went to chase his master without even looking at Mrs. Wen. Suleun twitched the corner of his mouth and sneered. The master and apprentice were quite smart. One knew how to withdraw at the right moment, and the other picked out the flaws in Mrs. Wen's words and successfully escaped, avoiding talking about Dr. Wang and Po Rongwen. Offend. No wonder Lu Changping, who has mediocre medical skills, has been able to get away with it to this day and has never been exposed. This shows that he is well versed in the ways of the world. Seeing Rong Wenpo standing at the door with her child in her arms, Qin Zian subconsciously took a step towards her and asked, can I hug her? Of course it's okay. Mother Rongwen finally put a smile on her face and carefully put the child in her hand. You are the child's aunt, and you and Miss Su are both the child's savior. Qin Zian took the child and felt warm in her heart. She also had a niece. Looking at Qin Zian holding the child, Suleun felt relieved. Fortunately, he arrived in time. Suleun was about to step forward to see the child when he saw Kualayu coming in from the door, walking in a hurry. Miss, I personally went to Feiqi Tower to inquire. The people there said that a young man called Mr. Wen not long after he arrived, and he left in a hurry. Suleun's expression darkened, his eyes fell from the baby's face to Kualayu's face, and asked, have you gone to check? Where did Mr. Wen go after that? End of this chapter. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 216. Chapter 216 is so disgusting. I have indeed returned to the house, Quilio said calmly. Her eyes ran across Mrs. Wen's face, and she noticed the flash of panic on her face, and she knew something in her mind. I have found out that Mr. Wen is early in the morning. I went to the residence of my concubine, Miss Daoyui, and I haven't come out yet. Sulayun was really angry and laughed. Master Wen's eldest daughter is born, why don't you go and invite her? Qin Zian was also very angry and said bluntly, my brother-in-law is really busy. If word gets out, everyone will praise him. He is full of energy. Mrs. Wen was anxious and gave Su Gun a wink, asking him to report the message secretly. Unexpectedly, before she could move, she was stopped by the soldiers in Xianyi's well-dressed uniform. It's just a woman giving birth, is it worth calling me over? Before anyone arrived, Mr. Wen's voice came in first. Immediately, a man with a feminine face walked in. His clothes were a little wrinkled, and his brows were full of impatience. After Sulayun heard this, the anger in his heart became even more uncontrollable. It's just that my concubine is pregnant. Is it worthy for Mr. Wen to give up his own future and run back eagerly to comfort him? Wen Rugui's face turned dark as soon as she was scolded. Sun's Hung went out and his eyes lit up immediately. The woman in front of her has a peach-like face, her cheeks are rosy, and her big auspicious eyes are filled with light, as fascinating as the broken starry sky. Wen Rugui felt a desire from the bottom of her heart and bowed politely, pretending to be a romantic scholar. I wonder whose house the young lady is from. Why have I never seen her before? After saying that, he looked at Sulayun with lustful eyes, full of ambiguity. How dare you? How dare you disrespect my young lady? Quilio stood in front of Sulayun, blocking Wen Rugui's sight. Mrs. Wen knew very well the temperament of her son. On the outside, he looked like a gentle and romantic scholar, but on the inside he was a beauty. She herself doesn't care. As for men, who doesn't love beauty? Which one doesn't have 3 wives and 4 concubines? The more beautiful women around him, the more promising a man is. But this one is too abrupt. She hurriedly came out to explain, this is the second young lady of Suho's house, and the second lady's son, who is Qiang Shuang's sister. It is because of them that Qiang Shuang and her children are safe and sound. Mrs. Wen's face turns green when she talks about the children. What a wonderful grandson she is. These people who kill 1,000 swords. The second young lady of Suhao mansion, Wen Rugui frowned, the one who just came back from the countryside. Subsequently, Wen Rugui's eyes fell on Qin Zian, Mrs. son and when he thought about it carefully, his expression changed slightly. He naturally knew that Qin Qiang Shuang's sister was married to Sun Malayang, but he didn't expect that at this juncture, the other party would actually come back from the northwest. Yes, this is also a peerless beauty. Mrs. Wen put her hand on his arm and squeezed it gently, signaling him not to make a mistake. Wen Rugui's eyes lost the original surprise, and her attitude became more respectful. Although the Sun Mansion seems to be in defeat, it is not easy for him to offend now that Suye has appeared. How come you two have time to come to Wen's house? In Mr. Wen's eyes, is his wife's free time when she gives birth. Sulayun looked cold. Qin Zian held the child in her arms and asked, Wen Rugui, let me ask you, are you not worried at all about Qiang Shuang's birth? Hearing the word Qiang Shuang, Wen Rugui's expression changed and she subconsciously said, that vicious woman actually wants to harm Cao Rui. I'm worried about what she will do, hiss. Before I could finish speaking, my mother, Mrs. Wen, pinched my arm. Mrs. Wen forced a smile and said to Qin Zian, they are the most affectionate couple. How can we not be worried? They were just frightened and talked nonsense. Mrs. son should not take it to heart. After finishing speaking, She gritted her teeth and whispered to Wen Rugui, "What nonsense are you talking about? Send these two people away first." Wen Rugui also realized that she had just said the wrong thing. Looking at the child in Qin Xian's arms, she changed her words and asked, "Mrs. Sun Er is holding my eldest son? I don't need you to worry about it. Nanny Wang, hurry up, bring her here so as not to tire Mrs. Sun Er." "No need." Sulayun stopped him and said directly, "We are all smart people, so I will open the skylight and speak out. I called Mr. Wen over this time just to tell him something." Ignoring Wen Rugui's frown, Sulayun said something calmly that sent chills down his back. "Those who spoil their concubines and destroy their wives will be removed from the quota even if they are shortlisted." A layer of cold sweat suddenly broke out on Wen Rugui's forehead. She gritted her teeth and said, "All students know this. I don't need Miss Su to remind me." Qin Xian's eyes were full of disappointment. Why did Qiang Shuang marry such a man? And, "Let me hold the child." Sulayun noticed something was wrong with Qin Xian and took the child from her. "Hold the small ball in your arms, just like holding a feather, as light as nothing." But she felt that the responsibility on her body was as heavy as 1,000 pieces of gold. Sulayun stopped looking at Wen Rugui and turned to ask Rong Wenpo, "Can we go in and see Aunt Qiang Shuang?" "Okay." Rong Wenpo nodded, "It's just that the mother can't blow the wind. The smell inside is very strong, and she's afraid of bumping into the two of them." Sulayun carried the child and walked in. "My aunt and I don't take the imperial examination, so we are not afraid of being criticized." These words were even more harsh and sarcastic to Wen Rugui's ears. She clenched her fists, tossed her sleeves and left. Mrs. Wen wanted to call him, but she didn't dare to make a sound, but she also didn't want to go in and see the little bitch's face, so she gritted her teeth and left. With all the protagonists gone, Wen who has no backbone, and he doesn't want to make a fuss, so he shakes his sleeves and leaves in a good mood. As long as that doesn't give birth to a son, everything is fine. Qin Qiang Shuang's vitality was severely weakened and she fell asleep after taking medicine. Sulayun and Qin Xian waited until they lit the lamp but did not wait for her to wake up, so they had to return to Sun Mansion first. Sun Gro had been waiting by the door for a long time. When she saw the group coming back, the worry on her face faded a little. "What's going on over there at Qiang Shuang?" Sulayun had only asked Kuliu to come back and said that she and her aunt would come back later, but did not elaborate on the specific situation. But Sun Gro was not stupid and knew that something must have gone wrong. Qin Xian walked into the house, pursed her lips and could not speak. "Mother!" Sun Yuxuan ran out of the house and hugged Qin Xian's legs, but soon he felt something was wrong with his mother. "Mom, what's wrong with you?" Looking at Yuxuan's son's face, Qin Xian knelt down and picked him up. "It's so late, you should go to bed." She carried Sun Yuxuan into the house. Sulayun sighed behind him and told Sun Gro about the situation one by one. "The Wen family is so disgusting." Sun Gro was furious, and then felt frightened. If Sulayun and Qin Xian hadn't arrived, Qin Qiang Shuang would have killed two people if he drank a bowl of medicine. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 217. Chapter 217. Sulayun thought of his past life, when Qin Qiang Shuang raised his concubine to Wen Rugui before she was 7 years old. The things the Wen family could do would be even more disgusting than what they could see. But don't interfere too much. In the final analysis, it is other people's family affairs. Sulayun, an unmarried woman, is so meddlesome that she may be gossiped about. Sulayun knew Sun Gro's concerns, but since she had intervened in Qin Qiang Shuang's matter from the beginning, she would not ignore it so easily. "What's more, there is also my second aunt," she said. "Mom, don't worry, this matter will still depend on the opinions of second aunt and Aunt Qiang Shuang. Yuner will help. Sun Gro couldn't tell what she meant. The Wen family is really hateful. I don't know what your aunt Qiangshuang is going to do. Suleun was also a little hesitant. If Qin Qiangshuang still had to swallow his anger, she and her second aunt would not know where to start even if they wanted to help. However, now that mother and daughter are safe, and with the protection of her and her second aunt today, maybe there will be some changes in the Wen family. Mom, tomorrow is the day when Su Weiner returns to peace. Do you want to go back? Suleun suddenly remembered this matter. I don't know how Su Weiner has been these past 2 days. She subconsciously felt a bit happy. Marrying Li Rui is not a good thing for Su Weiner. Firstly, if she and Prince Yu want to have something, they still have to worry about having an affair. Secondly, now that Li Rui is stupid, marrying a famous and talented girl in Beijing a fool, this news has spread throughout the capital long ago. I am afraid Su Weiner already knows about it. Suleun was not a good man or woman, but the happiness in his heart only lasted a moment. She died at the hands of Su Weiner in her previous life, and she will not let Su Weiner go so easily in this life. Sun Gro started to think about it when she reminded her. Since we are in Ginning, it would be bad if my nominal mother doesn't show up. It just so happens that I can go back with you. The mother and daughter returned to the Su mansion together without disturbing others. Early the next morning, Su Changqing woke up from her sleep and put her arms around Wen Yao. Sulang, I heard that my wife is back. Who? Su Changqing didn't hear clearly for a while. After his mind turned around for a few times, he suddenly woke up. He straightened up and asked, Mr. Sun is back. Wen Yao waited for him to get up, and while dressing him, he said, Nanny Zhao came early in the morning to convey the message, saying that Sun Gro is now in the main hall, and it seems that she is waiting for Su Weiner to return to peace. When Su Weiner was mentioned, Su Changqing's face was not very good looking. Having already become Prince Yu, who would have thought that the Li family would come to force her to marry her, so that Su Weiner had to marry her. Fortunately, King Yu didn't care about this matter, otherwise even if he had a few heads, they wouldn't be enough. The Li family won't let that fool come either. Su Changqing complained, but quickly cleaned himself up. Yu Niang, take a good rest these days. Sulang, don't worry about me. I think the lady also wants to take this opportunity to give herself a step back. Sulang, you have to comfort the lady. Wen Yao was quite considerate, and Su Changqing felt a little more pity, but her mouth was full of dissatisfaction with Sun Gro. This Sun lady is used to putting on airs, so it's better for you, Yu Niang. Don't worry, wait until I take care of Sun Gro. If you can coax me, I will come to accompany you. Watching Su Changqing leave, Wen Yao's face turned cold. Sun Gro will not come back sooner or later, but she chose Su Weiner Ginning's day to come back, which is really a bit cunning. But Wen Yao touched her belly. With this child here, she will become the wife of the Su family sooner or later. In the main hall, Suleun followed Sun Gro, and when she saw Su Changqing coming in a hurry, a dark look flashed in her eyes. Su Changqing seems to have just come out of Wenro Township. Ever since Wen Yao entered the Su mansion, Su Changqing has become more and more undisguised. Suleun has a keen sense of smell. He smelled Wen Yao's scent from Su Changqing several times. How could he not know that he often went in and out of Wen Yao's yard? She concealed her expression and saluted Su Changqing respectfully. Rower, you are finally back. Su Changqing's face was filled with joy, and he seemed to be really happy. But if you look closely, you will find that his smile is only superficial and extremely hypocritical. Sun Gro no longer had any expectations for Su Changqing, and now she even felt that she was blind before. She said calmly, my servant said that the Marquis slept in the study last night. Su Changqing didn't notice at all, there are a lot of things these days, so I can only sleep in the study. Really? But the study is on the east side, why did the marquee come from the west? Suchanking's face froze. He had forgotten this incident. The atmosphere suddenly cooled down. Sun Gro didn't speak, but looked at Suchangqing with a smile, as if she had seen through something. Suchangqing seemed to be able to hear his own heartbeat, which made a few drops of cold sweat break out on his forehead. He tightened his hands and there was a little sweat on his palms. The eldest lady is back. At this moment, the boy shouted loudly and helped Suchangqing out of the siege. Suchangqing quickly wiped the sweat from his face and looked outside. Not far away, a group of people walked slowly towards the main hall. Getting closer, Suleun saw Suwaner's figure, and next to her was Li Rui. Unexpectedly, the Li family was relieved to let Li Rui accompany Suwaner to return to Ning. She is narrow-minded. Suleun had a smile in his eyes. Suwaner stepped into the main hall and raised her eyes to see the smile in Suleun's eyes. Suwaner barely suppressed the anger in her heart and said with a smile, "Father, Mother, Waner is back." As she said that, she pulled Li Rui off. But after a while, Li Rui made no move. Suwaner's mouth curved a little lower. She turned her head and saw Li Rui staring at Suleun intently. "Husband!" she shouted softly. Li Rui still looked at Suleun without making any movement. At this time, everyone present saw the problem. Looks around at Li Rui, Suwaner, and Suleun. Suleun slowly frowned. Why was Li Rui staring at her? "Brother Rui, have you forgotten what you promised me when you went out?" Suwaner's face turned blue and white, and she pulled Li Rui and touched it in his ear. Li Rui blinked his eyes and stretched out his hand to push Suwaner away. "Madam." The maid behind her reacted quickly and supported Suwaner. Suleun then noticed that there was no Yayao among the maids who came back with Suwaner. Amidst the commotion, Li Rui ran to Suleun's side in a few steps. He stretched out his hand to pull Suleun, but Suleun avoided it. "What you do?" Suleun pulled Sun Gro back a few steps, worried that Li Rui would suddenly go crazy like last time. But Li Rui was stunned on the spot, a tear suddenly falling from the corner of his eye. He looked at Suleun stupidly, opening and closing his mouth. Subsequently, his eyes turned from cloudy to clear again. He turned to look at Suwaner, and walked slowly over. She seemed to have calmed down again. But Suleun was in an uproar. Just now, what Li Rui said was, "I'm sorry." End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 218. Chapter 218. Chun Shui asks for help. "Miss." Quiliu shouted softly, stretched out her hand and waved it in front of Suleun. It is already dark outside the house, but from morning to now, the young lady will suddenly fall into deep thought from time to time. Could it be that Li Rui scared the young lady this morning? Suleun blinked and came out of her thoughts. She looked at Lian Xian. Have the invitations for the Wen family's wedding banquet been sent to the Sun Mansion? No. Lian Xian frowned. She knew that her master was thinking about the Wen family's eldest grandmother and the newly born daughter, so she asked the little maid to go to the gate to inquire about it early this morning. Indeed, no one came to deliver the invitation. Suleun raised his eyebrows and asked, "Is it not a gift, or is it just a gift to the Sun family?" None of them. Lian Xian sighed, looking at the attitudes of Mrs. Wen and Mr. Wen yesterday. "I guess they don't care about the child." Suleun tightened his hands and frowned tightly. Looking at the Wen family's attitude yesterday, it was clear that they didn't care about the child. But after all, it is a big happy event. Those with lower family backgrounds, especially those who have just entered the capital and have no foundation, have little opportunity to hold banquets, and few people invite them. They wish they could have more happy events at home so that they could have a reason to invite their friends. The banquet would be fake but the relationship would be real. She thought that even if the Wen family didn't want to, they would just hold their noses and hold the banquet. Who would have thought that they would be able to do this? Without even caring about their future and face, one can imagine what Qin Qiangshuang and the child would be like in the Wen family. Sulayun was worried and said to Lian Xian, whether they hold the third wedding banquet or not, and whether they invite us or not, you can send it over with the gifts you prepared, and take a look at Aunt Qiangshuang and the child. If you can have a few words with Aunt Qiangshuang in private, tell her that if she has any difficulties, just send someone to find second aunt or come to me. If you can't find a chance to talk, don't force it, lest it spread. Once she got to the ears of others, she was under strict supervision, and even if she wanted to come out to deliver the letter, she couldn't do it. Lian Xian responded, "Don't worry, young lady, I understand." Sulayun nodded, but he was still uneasy in his heart and warned uneasily, "Let Aunt Zhang go with you and bring a few soldiers with her, so that Mrs. Wen will not embarrass you and prevent you from entering." "Hey, don't worry, miss, I'll go talk to grandma right now." Kuliu had already made the bed. Lian Xian saw it and said, "It's late at night. Miss, please go to bed first." Sulayun rubbed his brows, suddenly feeling tired. Li Rui's sorry words today made her think a lot. Li Rui was indeed stupid. This cannot be false. But when he saw himself, it was hard to tell whether he was stupid or good. What's more, who is Li Rui? If your eyes are higher than your head, even if you are doing well, why should you apologize to her? Even, at that moment, she felt as if she had seen Li Rui in his previous life, somewhat like he was when he was an official. Let Kuliu wait on her and get on the couch. She slept for an unknown period of time before someone shook her awake. Sulayun had a splitting headache, rubbed his brows and stood up. "What time is it?" "It's not yet midnight." Lian Xian hung up the curtain and said worriedly, "There was a boy at the other end of the door. He said that someone knocked on the door and wanted to see the young lady. He said it was from the Wen family's eldest grandma. I'm worried that something happened over there. I just woke you up now, but do you want to call me in for a meeting?" "Let her in quickly," Sulayun said quickly, stood up and dressed, and told her, "I don't need you to serve me here. Go and pick her up in person, so as not to be stopped by someone who is short-sighted." Yes, Lian Xian put on her clothes and hurried away. Coming back, Sulayun was fully dressed and sitting outside, with a fresh cup of tea at his hand. As soon as the man saw Sulayun, he quickly knelt down and kowtowed, "Slave Chun Shui, I have seen Miss Su. Get up and sit down and talk." Sulayun motioned to Lian Xian to help him up. "You are coming here at this hour, but what orders does your eldest grandma have?" When Chun Shui heard this, he cried out, "Please, Miss Su, please save my eldest grandma and young lady." Speaking, he knelt down on the ground. Lian Xian hurriedly supported her and advised anxiously, "Don't cry yet. My lady will definitely not leave your two masters alone, but you have to talk about the matter first so that our lady can make up her mind, right?" Chun Shui sniffed and then said, "The thing is like this. When our eldest grandma was born prematurely, she was only with her aunt and we didn't know what happened. But at the end of the Yin period today, the eldest son suddenly went there angrily. They arrested people in our grandma's yard, saying that our grandma poisoned my aunt and killed the child in her belly. Of course our eldest grandma refused to admit it, but the eldest son was determined to cure her, so he kidnapped Sister Kaiyutong, guarded all the servants in the eldest grandma's yard, locked the courtyard door, and said it was the eldest grandma. If you don't admit your mistake, you won't be allowed to open the door. When the slave came out, I heard the sound of people being beaten with sticks and the screams of Sister Kaiyutong from my aunt's yard. I thought she wouldn't be able to hold on for much longer. I beg Miss Su to save her until the end. Go and have a look." Lian Xian frowned and asked, "Since everyone in grandma's yard is under guard, how did you escape?" This slave is not from grandma's courtyard. Chun Shui cried and shook his head. This slave is just a rough maid, and she does some washing work on weekdays. Previously, I accidentally washed the clothes of second grandma, and second mistress wanted to beat her to death. Is that right? The eldest grandma saved the slave's life and even paid for the second grandma's clothes for the slave. Although I haven't studied in school, I also know the principle of repaying kindness. In the past, I couldn't help my grandma. Yesterday, my grandma gave birth. I went to help carry water and saw Miss Sue. Today, I'm here. The slave got up to work and happened to hear what happened, so he came to find you. Chun Shui kowtowed to Suleun and cried and begged, I swear, everything I said just now is true. If there is even half a lie to deceive Miss Sue, I will cause sores on my head and pus on the soles of my feet, and I will not have a good death. I'm just asking, what are you doing? Lien Xian's pretty face turned red, a little embarrassed about her doubts. Suleun thought of Qin Qiangshuang's ending in his previous life and couldn't sit still anymore. He stood up and told Lien Xian, hurry up and ask the porter to prepare the carriage. Let's go there quickly. Let Quiliu go to Sun's house first and ask her second aunt to rush to Wen's house. It would be of little use if she showed up alone for this matter. Chun Shui cried with joy, kowtowed to Suleun and said, Miss Su really has a bodhisattva heart. Even if I work as a cow or a horse, I still want to repay you for your great kindness. This is what I wanted to do, and I don't need anything in return from you. Suleun personally helped her up. If we really want to thank you, we would also like to thank you for taking such a big risk to come out and talk about this matter. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 219. Chapter 219 Return. The group of people quickly packed up and met at the entrance of Su Mansion. After thinking about it, Suleun said to Lien Xian, go and catch another car to pick up Rong Wenpo and Divine Dr. Wang. Lien Xian responded without saying a word. Seeing the anxious look on her face, Nanny Zhang patted her hand to comfort her, Miss, don't worry, Miss Qiangshuang is a blessed one and will be fine. You go and make the decision for her, don't be impatient first, things can go wrong when people are in a hurry. Yes, Suleun breathed softly to calm himself down. At this time, there were not many people coming and going on the street, and the driver knew that the owner was in a hurry, so the driver drove the car quickly and steadily, and arrived at the door of Wen's house in a short time. Sun Wen stepped forward and knocked on the door. It took a while before someone answered the door. It was the same boy from yesterday. Who is it, knocking on the door at this hour? Why don't you let me sleep? The boy yawned, his eyes fell on Sun Wen's face, and he was stunned for a moment. Looking outside again, when he saw Suleun, he immediately cursed hell and closed the door with a clang. Obviously, this is to keep them out. Sun Wen looked at Suleun, waiting for her instructions. Suleun said coldly, the Wen family is really powerful. If you don't want to open the door, then forget it. The boy behind the door just breathed a sigh of relief when he heard Suleun say, Sun Wen, just go in and open the door. The boy's heart suddenly became excited and he ran towards the courtyard. The man in Suanyi's well-dressed clothes fell in front of him, and slashed his neck with a knife. The boy suddenly fainted on the ground. The gate was quickly opened, and Chun Shui led the way. As soon as they entered the Zikuo courtyard, the dull sound of sticks hitting people hit their ears, making those who heard it tremble in their hearts. Several people quickened their pace, and as soon as they entered the courtyard, they saw that the clothes of the beaten man had been stained dark red with blood. When Rugui was sitting on a chair nearby, holding a cup of tea in his hand, drinking it slowly, as if he didn't see that the person who was beaten was already dying. Sister Kaiyutong, Chun Shui exclaimed, with a cry in his voice, obviously frightened. It has been more than half an hour since she left. Chiu Tong was being beaten when she left, and he was still being beaten when she came back. Even a strong man cannot bear it, let alone a weak girl. Stop. Suleun entered the door and walked straight towards Wen Rugui. A woman saw her and asked loudly, "Who are you? How can you break into our aunt's yard?" Blinding your dog's eyes, this is the second young lady of our Suhao mansion. You, a humble concubine, dare to question and reprimand her, Grandma Zhang immediately shouted angrily. The woman's neck shrunk and her eyes rolled around. It was obvious at first glance that she was not a kind person. She glanced at Wen Rugui and said without confidence, "Even if the King of Heaven comes, I can't break into other people's mansions. Isn't this taking our master and the eldest son seriously?" When Wen Rugui heard this, her face turned ugly. Mammy Zhang, however, acted as if she hadn't seen it and sneered, "Oh, it's lucky that Our Lady broke in and saved the eldest young master today, otherwise, the one who breaks in tomorrow will be the minister of Dali Temple." "Stop talking nonsense," Wen Rugui scolded angrily and looked at Suleun with an unkind expression. "Is Miss Su addicted to meddling in other people's business?" Suleun looked at him, his expression more serious than ever before, and his voice getting colder. "Master Wen, are you not convinced by what our grandma said?" Wen Rugui snorted coldly as an answer. Suleun was not annoyed, and said directly, "The court has laws and you are not allowed to kill slaves privately. What's more, Kaiyu Tong is Aunt Kyung Shuang's dowry maid. She is from the Qin family, not from your Wen family. You beat her like this without asking any questions. Where did you put your family-in-law? Compared to the Suhao mansion and the Sun family, the Qin family is really not good enough. However, Qin Kyung Shuang's father is now the 6th-rank Imperial College secretary, while Wen Rugui's father is an editor of the Hanlin Academy. Comparing the two, the former is 2 levels higher. At that time, it was Qin Kyung Shuang's father who took a fancy to Wen Rugui's talent and learning, and it was Mr. Wen who lowered his face and arranged the marriage himself, so he agreed to the marriage. Because of this, Wen Rugui felt that she couldn't hold her head up in front of Qin Kyung Shuang, so she often maintained a high profile in front of her and never treated her gently to show her masculinity. Now when he heard Suleun mentioning his in-law family, Wen Rugui was even more furious. She threw the teacup in her hand to the ground and shouted angrily, "The child in Daoryui's belly is the flesh and blood of our Wen family. Is it possible that their Qin family his face is more noble than the flesh and blood of our Wen family?" The maids and servants in the yard were all frightened by Wen Rugui's anger. They had never seen their eldest son become so angry. They all remained silent, bowed their heads like quails, and did not dare to take a breath. Mammy Zhang protected Suleun and took a step back, fearing that the broken pieces of the teacup would splash on her body and injure her. Sun Wen led the soldiers forward and stood between Wen Rugui and Suleun. He held the hilt of the sword with his strong hands, and his body was tense like a beast that was ready to go. As long as Suleun gave an order, everything would be over. Everyone in the courtyard will be dead. This formation frightened Wen Rugui, and she was secretly annoyed that she had just become so angry that she lost consciousness and threw the cup in front of Suleun. Turning around, he saw that the servants around him were all like mice that had seen a cat. Not to mention the group of government soldiers in front of him who came forward to protect him. Even they themselves looked frightened, even more so. I can't get angry at all. Suleun is not afraid of Wen Rugui, not to mention that there are so many people around her protecting her identity. If he really has such courage, she would still admire him. Suleun's beautiful eyes were gleaming with fire. The eyes were extremely dark and bright. She stared into his eyes and asked, "How do you know that the child in your concubine's belly was poisoned by Chiu Tong?" Miss Su really didn't shed tears until she saw the coffin. When Rugui gritted her teeth and sneered, "Mother Lu, bring up the evidence and show it to Miss Su." The woman who spoke earlier was frightened to death. After hearing this sentence, she immediately responded happily. A ray of light burst out from her yellow and turbid eyes of the dead fish, and she hurried into the house. Not long after, he came out with a white porcelain bowl and placed it on the table next to Wen Rugui. She snorted, her fat cheeks twitched, and said in a sinister tone, "Doctor, you said that there is a flavor of return added to this bird's nest porridge. Miss Su can go and find out. Return, if a pregnant woman takes this medicine, it will cause miscarriage." Seeing that Suleun didn't look at her, Aunt Lu secretly cursed, "You little pretentious person," and then said, "Look at Miss Su, you don't believe what I said. You can ask other doctors to see if it's true. That's not what you're saying." End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 220. Chapter 220. Divorce your wife? The slaves of the Wen family are really capable. They try to bully the master in both words and deeds. What's wrong? The rules of the Wen family are actually contrary to the rules. When a slave speaks, the master must listen and obey him honestly. Right, said Granny Zhang. For most of my life, I have never been able to tell what this Aunt Lu was thinking. She asked Wen Rugui with a smile on her face, or is it that the Wen family thinks that our Suhao mansion is easy to bully, so they specially sent a slave to bully our master? Don't back down yet, Wen Rugui scolded Grandma Lu with a dark face. You usually look smart, why are you so presumptuous in front of noble people? Doesn't this make him and his father uncomfortable? Wen Rugui quickly changed her words, this return really shouldn't appear in a pregnant woman's food, and the woman who was cooking the fire in the kitchen said that it was Chiu Tong who gave this thing to put in the bird's nest porridge. Inner. Miss Su, you can think about it? She's just a maid. How dare you do such a thing after eating a bear's heart? Wen Rugui said, her eyes turning sinister. Now I only kill her and keep her behind for my dignity. Miss Su should thank me properly. Mama Lu lowered her head, showing a successful smile, and then quickly restrained it. Suleun looked at the clear bowl of bird's nest porridge and frowned slightly. She does know that the medicine return is an indispensable medicine for making ma fei powder if a woman has a miscarriage, I'm afraid. She glanced at Nanny Lu and felt enlightened. No wonder she felt strange when she saw her just now. Her master had a miscarriage, so why didn't she feel anxious and angry? After figuring out the twists and turns, Suleun became even more calm. What Mr. Wen said is true. This matter cannot be the result of Chiu Tong alone. Mama Liu's eyelids twitched, she couldn't figure out what kind of medicine she was selling in her gourd, but she actually agreed to it. After thinking about it, although Suleun was said to be the second lady of Suhaofu, in the final analysis, it was also a village ant just entered Beijing. What world can you see? Moreover, those country people know how to protect themselves wisely. She must have known that there was no way to save her life, so she just broke the pot and threw it away, leaving it alone. Thinking like this, the pride in Nanny Liu's eyes couldn't help overflowing. So what if Qin Qiangshuang was protected and saved her life? Let her taste the feeling of dashed hope today. Suleun took in her expression and sneered, I've also heard of this return. It's a good medicine for making ma fei powder. It's very valuable and it's hard to find. Any medical clinic that has this medicine is afraid there aren't many, right? Kai Tong is a little maid, and her master has just given birth, so she can't get away from her, so she definitely can't buy it. Miss Su is indeed meticulous. When Rugui showed a genuine expression and pointed at a man kneeling on the ground and said, tell Miss Su who bought the medicine. The man was already scared out of his wits by the force of the cane punishment, and he immediately said what he said like he was pouring beans, to my lord, my name is Hulu, and I work for Baiko Hall. Yesterday evening, this girl came here when buying medicine, I only asked for this flavor, and said I wanted to buy them all, muttering something like, I don't know if the medicine is effective enough. Although I have not been studying medicine for a long time, I know that this is unusual. Among the people who come to buy medicine, there are some who buy out prepared medicines such as cold and sore medicine at once, but it is rare to buy out one of the medicines. Xiao the person then asked a question, but not only did she not explain, she even treated the villain unpretentiously, and even threatened the villain not to tell anyone about it. The villain just thought she had gotten some good prescription and didn't want others to know about it. Seeing that she gave a lot of money, he didn't say much. How could he know that she was bought to harm others? Please, sir, what I said is true. Please be kind and let me go. It's going to be done now, and I have to rush back to clean up, otherwise my wages will be deducted. Su Guan kicked him and scolded, what nonsense. Once the matter is investigated, I will naturally let you go. When Rugui asked Suleun, Miss Su, do you have any other advice? Thinking of the last words she said to him the day before yesterday, he was afraid that she would say the words of doting on his concubine and destroying his wife again, so he continued, Qian Shuang is my married wife, and what happened this time was really a mistake. That day she and Tao Rui were in the house when they suddenly fell down, so it was normal for her to mistakenly think it was Tao Rui. It's just that her delivery went smoothly, and the mother and daughter are now in peace, but she harbors a grudge and wants to harm the flesh and blood of my Wen family. This is absolutely unacceptable. If I hadn't punished Qiu Tong today, I would wait until dawn. I'm afraid my father and mother will order me to divorce my wife, and it won't look good on anyone's face. Miss Su, can you understand? What Mr. Wen said is interesting. I just want to divorce my wife, but I'm afraid it's impossible. Suleun's voice was cold, like pearls dropped in an icy lake, crisp and cold. Tao Rui, who had been eavesdropping in the room, tightened her face when she heard this, and a trace of hatred flashed in her heart. She put on a delicate look and rushed out. Sir, it is absolutely forbidden to divorce your wife. Tao Rui, why did you come out? When Rugui saw her running out with a pale face, and her heart almost jumped out of fear, so she quickly stepped forward to help her. Suleun's face turned cold. And Qian Shuang's birth was so dangerous the day before yesterday. This person didn't even show his face. The impatient look when he was called was compared with the two today. What else can't be understood? Tao Rui hid in Wen Rugui's arms and carefully looked at Suleun. As soon as she raised her eyes, she met Suleun's cold, frosty eyes. She was frightened and looked away in panic. Looking at those overly dark eyes, Tao Rui felt as if she had been seen through, with nowhere to hide. She quickly thought about all the arrangements in her mind, and after confirming that there were no flaws, she breathed a sigh of relief. She threw herself into Wen Rugui's arms, about to cry, I heard you say you were divorcing my sister in the house, and I couldn't lie down any longer. Tao Rui believed that this matter must have nothing to do with my sister. Even if my sister misunderstands Tao Rui is not worthy of you divorcing your wife for the sake of my concubine. The crystal clear tears hang on the pale snowy cheeks. The already frail and lovable person adds a bit of vulnerability, vividly interpreting a mother who has just lost her flesh and blood. When Rugui saw her, and she held her in her arms lovingly and comforted her softly. Suleun felt sick in his heart when he saw these two people talking to each other like no one else was around. Turning to ask the man carrying the medicine box who followed Tao Rui out, he asked, is this Dru? I don't dare to be a miracle doctor, my surname is indeed Sunday, Yu Zhong said humbly. Suleun nodded and asked him, may I ask, sir, how much dose of this return medicine is needed to cause someone to tire? It costs 2 money even if you say less, Yu Zhong said, stroking his goatee. Suleun ordered the soldiers, go to the drugstore to catch the 2 cent, go back, and be quick. One of them should step down, take a small step, and disappear into the air. End of this chapter.